The first rays of morning sunlight had barely touched the meticulously manicured lawn when Sarah Matthews heard the shrill voice that would change everything. She was arranging her prized ceramic garden gnomes, a collection she curated over 15 years of passionate weekend antiquing, when Karen Henderson's voice sliced through the peaceful suburban morning like a laser. "This is a Pubileski Puol," Karen bellowed, her voice carrying across the wrought iron fence that separated their properties. Sarah's fingers, mid-placement of a rare 1960s German garden gnome, froze. She turned slowly, her perfectly pressed lavender cardigan rustling with a movement, her reading glasses perched precisely on the bridge of her nose. The pool in question was her pride and joy. A stunning in-ground masterpiece she and her late husband Robert had installed 7 summers ago, complete with a custom mosaic tile border that depicted their favorite travel memories. Karen Henderson was not a woman known for subtlety. At 57, she was the self-appointed neighborhood watchdog, a retired school administrator who seemed to have made it her life's mission to enforce an endless array of unwritten suburban rules. Her current weapon of choice was a thick binder labeled Neighborhood Covenant Guidelines, which she clutched like a legal tom. "I beg your pardon?" Sarah's voice was calm, but there was an underlying steel that those who knew her understood meant trouble. Karen marched closer, her orthopedic shoes clicking against the decorative stone pathway. "I've reviewed the original neighborhood plat maps. Your pool's positioning suggests it might be considered a community resource. The angle of your property line combined with the setback requirements from 1998 potentially classifies this as a shared recreational space." Sarah stared, momentarily stunned by the absolute absurdity of the claim. She and Robert had spent $127,000 on this pool, selecting each tile, each curve of the landscape with meticulous care. They had hosted exactly 3 private pool parties in 7 years, all carefully curated gatherings of their closest friends from the local botanical society and Robert's retired university colleagues. "A public pool?" Sarah repeated, her voice a blend of disbelief and mounting irritation. Karen nodded, opening her binder and pointing to what appeared to be a complicated diagram with multiple colored lines and annotations. These survey markers, combined with the original development covenants, suggest a potential shared-use classification. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't possibly understand, was that this pool represented more than just a backyard amenity. It was Sarah's sanctuary. After Robert's passing 3 years ago, this pool had been her refuge. Every morning, she would swim precisely 40 laps, each stroke a meditation, each breath a connection to the memories of the man she had loved for 42 years. And now this woman, this bureaucratic tornado, was suggesting it might be a public pool. Sarah adjusted her glasses, a dangerous glint entering her eyes. If Karen wanted a public pool, she would get a public pool, but not any way Karen could possibly imagine. The neighborhood would never be the same again. The local library's culinary section became Sarah's war room. For 3 days straight, she researched with the same intensity she once applied to her academic research as a retired biochemistry professor. Volumes on food science, gelatin properties, and industrial-scale cooking techniques formed towering stacks around her usual reading spot. Her grandson Tyler, a marketing major at the local state university, thought she had finally lost her mind when he discovered her spreadsheets. Calculations covered every inch of graph paper. Volume calculations, gelatin-to-water ratios, structural integrity estimates for a pool-sized gelatin creation. "Grandma," Tyler said, peering over her shoulder, "are you planning to actually fill the entire pool with Jello?" Sarah didn't look up from her calculations. "Not just any Jello, dear. I'm going to create the most scientifically precise, structurally sound gelatin environment this neighborhood has ever seen." Her research revealed fascinating details. She would need approximately 3,200 pounds of gelatin powder. Commercial-grade gelatin, to be precise. The pool's 20,000-gallon capacity meant she'd be creating a culinary marvel that would make industrial food scientists weep with joy or horror. Local restaurant supply stores became her hunting grounds. The first owner looked at her skeptically when she requested bulk gelatin orders. "Ma'am, that's enough gelatin to feed a small country," he muttered. "I'm aware," Sarah replied coolly, sliding over her meticulously prepared purchase order. Tyler began to document her preparations, sensing something epic was brewing. He created a private Instagram account at Grandma's Gelatin Conspiracy, capturing her increasingly elaborate preparations. Each post showed another stage of her master plan, industrial mixers being delivered, pallets of gelatin powder stacked in her immaculate garage, color-coded charts mapping out her strategy. What Karen Henderson didn't understand was that Sarah Matthews was not just a retired professor with a pristine garden and a beautiful pool. She was a woman of science, precision, and, when provoked, remarkable creativity. The neighborhood watched, bemused, and confused as trucks began delivering strange equipment to Sarah's property. Large industrial mixers, massive heating elements, enormous cooling units, Tyler's Instagram followers grew from 12 to over 500 in just 3 days, each post hinting at something extraordinary about to happen. Sarah's plan was taking shape. If Karen wanted to claim her pool was public, then the public would indeed get something spectacular. Something absolutely unforgettable. The night before her grand transformation, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat in her kitchen, surrounded by blueprints, gelatin specifications, and a thermos of chamomile tea that had long since gone cold. Outside, the pool gleamed under the moonlight, her canvas, waiting to become something extraordinary. Tyler had been instrumental in the final preparations. He recruited 3 of his college friends, engineering and chemistry students who saw this as the ultimate practical application of their academic knowledge. They arrived with professional-grade equipment, industrial mixers, temperature-controlled containers, and enough scientific enthusiasm to make a NASA team look casual. Karen Henderson, meanwhile, had no idea what was coming. The neighborhood had been buzzing with rumors. Mrs. Peterson from 2 doors down had seen the delivery trucks. The local gossip chain, a complex network more efficient than any internet communication, was working overtime. Some neighbors thought Sarah was filming a movie. Others speculated she was creating some kind of bizarre art installation. Only Tyler truly understood the scope of his grandmother's plan. It's not just about revenge, Sarah had explained to him earlier that evening. It's about making a statement, about boundaries, about respecting private property. The gelatin mixture was a marvel of scientific precision. Sarah had consulted with a food scientist colleague from her university days, developing a formula that would create a stable, vibrant, and most importantly, completely safe gelatin environment. Multiple colors were planned. A gradient that would transform the pool from deep blue at one end to bright green at the other, with swirls of red and yellow creating a mesmerizing effect. By midnight, everything was in place. The industrial mixers stood ready. Cooling units hummed softly in the garage. Tyler and his friends had done a final equipment check, their excitement barely contained. "Grandma," Tyler asked, a hint of concern in his voice, "are you absolutely sure about this?" Sarah's smile was equal parts mischievous and determined. "Absolutely," she replied, adjusting her reading glasses. "Karen wants a public pool. Well, she's about to get the most memorable public pool in suburban history." As the clock struck midnight, the first batch of gelatin began to mix. The kitchen filled with a sweet, artificial fruit smell, the scent of rebellion, of scientific precision, of a suburban showdown about to reach its most spectacular moment. Tomorrow, the neighborhood would never be the same. Dawn broke with an unnatural stillness. The first rays of sunlight caught the fleet of industrial trucks parked along Sarah Matthews' immaculate street. Neighbors peered through curtains, smartphones at the ready, capturing what was quickly becoming the most talked-about event in suburban history. By 6 a.m., the operation was in full swing. Tyler and his college friends moved with military precision, each wearing custom t-shirts Tyler had printed the night before, Operation Jello Pool emblazoned across the back in bold letters. Industrial mixers roared to life, transforming massive quantities of gelatin powder and water into a vibrant, quivering liquid that defied imagination. Karen Henderson chose that moment to make her morning patrol. "What on earth is happening here?" she demanded, marching up the driveway, her neighborhood covenant binder clutched like a shield. Sarah, dressed in a crisp white lab coat, a memento from her years in academic research, turned slowly. "Why, Karen," she said with a sweetness that could have frozen nitrogen, "I'm making the pool public, just as you suggested." The gelatin began to flow. Vibrant blues, greens, reds, and yellows cascaded into the pool, creating a mesmerizing gradient that looked like something between a mad scientist's experiment and a work of abstract art. The viscous liquid moved with an almost living quality, bubbling and settling with hypnotic regularity. Tyler's Instagram account was exploding. Hashtag Jellopool Revolution was trending locally, with live updates showing the transformation minute by minute. Local news vans began to arrive, their satellite dishes rising like mechanical flowers in the quiet suburban morning. "This is not what I meant by a public pool," Karen sputtered, her face turning a shade of red that competed with the gelatin's most vivid hue. Sarah remained perfectly calm. "You said the pool could be considered a public resource," she explained, measuring another batch of gelatin with scientific precision. "Well, here it is. Completely, utterly, publicly accessible." By 9 a.m., the pool was full. Nearly 20,000 gallons of multicolored gelatin shimmered in the morning sun, creating a spectacle that defied description. Neighbors gathered at the edges of their lawns. Children pressed against windows. Even a local mail carrier stopped mid-route, mouth agape. Karen tried to protest. She waved her covenant binder. She called the Homeowners Association. She even attempted to contact local authorities. But Sarah had done her homework. Every permit was in order. Every regulation had been meticulously followed. "It's perfectly safe," Sarah explained to the gathering crowd. "Completely edible. entirely legal. Tyler couldn't help but laugh. His grandmother had just become a local legend. As the morning progressed, the Jello pool became a sensation. News helicopters circled overhead. Social media exploded with images and videos. Sarah Matthews, retired biochemistry professor, widow, and now infamous Jello pool creator, stood at the center of it all, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. Karen Henderson, meanwhile, looked like she might spontaneously combust from sheer outrage. The fallout was nothing short of spectacular. Within 48 hours, Sarah Matthews became an internet sensation. Late-night talk show hosts were cracking jokes about her Jello pool. Viral memes featured her stern face photoshopped onto various gelatin-related backgrounds. Tyler's Instagram account at Grandma's Gelatin Conspiracy hit over 250,000 followers, with merchandise featuring Sarah's catchphrase, "If you want a public pool, here's a pubilicity puol," selling out within hours. The Homeowners Association hearing became legendary. Sarah arrived with Tyler, her lawyer, and a meticulously prepared presentation that would have made her academic colleagues proud. She had documentation proving she had followed every single regulation. The covenant Karen had been waving around. Sarah had found a loophole so large you could swim in an Olympic-sized Jello pool through it. "Technically," Sarah explained, adjusting her glasses with surgical precision, "I have created a public art installation. It meets all recreational space guidelines. It's completely safe, entirely edible, and might I add, quite beautiful." Karen's face had gone through several stages of apoplexy. First red, then purple, then a shade that medical professionals might classify as imminent cardiac event. The local community, initially shocked, began to embrace the absurdity. Local restaurants started offering Jello pool-themed desserts. The high school swim team took promotional photos in protective suits, standing on the gelatin's surface. Tyler's marketing professors used the entire event as a case study in viral marketing and community engagement. But Sarah wasn't done. She began offering controlled Jello pool experience days. For a modest donation to the local animal shelter, residents could take carefully monitored dips in the massive gelatin installation. Professional safety teams were brought in, waivers were signed. It became a community event that drew tourists from 3 states away. The most unexpected outcome, the property value of her home skyrocketed. Real estate agents began using terms like Jello pool property as a selling point. Tourists would drive by taking photos, sharing stories about the legendary Sarah Matthews and her incredible act of suburban rebellion. Karen, meanwhile, had become a local pariah. Her constant complaints were now met with eye rolls and laughter. The very neighborhood covenant system she had championed was being used against her, with Sarah's lawyer pointing out multiple inconsistencies and outdated regulations. "I just wanted to swim," Sarah would later tell reporters, a twinkle in her eye. And now, technically, everyone can. Tyler watched his grandmother become a folk hero, documenting every moment. The Jello pool was more than just a middle finger to bureaucratic overreach. It was a statement. A declaration that creativity, science, and a bit of humor could triumph over petty neighborhood politics. As the sun set on another day of Jello-based chaos, Sarah Matthews sat on her patio, sipping her evening tea, looking out over the most famous pool in suburban history. She allowed herself a small, satisfied smile.